pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. McCullough, could we get a roll call, please?
Mr. Seminaro. Here. Mrs. Hamill. Here. Mr. Kurtz. Here. Mr. McCullough. Here. Mr. McLaughlin. Here. Mr. Potts. Here. Mr. Shaheen. Here. Mr. Wolf. Here. And Mr. Basil.
Here. Under announcements, I have a couple of edits to the agenda. So the first one is 12A1B. It should say, quote unquote, as needed. She will not be off the whole time. 12A1C. Diana Kaplan, APC High School and Middle School Librarian, unpaid leave of absence March 13th, 2012 until approximately June 30th, 2012, as needed. Also 13A says pairs. It should say Paris.
It's just a typo.
It's a typo. Let's see, under 14.
Spell check won't fix that.
Right, 14. Okay, and then under 17, new business, wanted to add legal opinions, and then I think Mr. Sheehan.
Actually, I was going through some previous ones. I'd like to add that under financial approvals as an H.
Okay.
We've done that in the past. The approval of the support staff contract.
So let me go down. Financial approvals is 11H.
Yes.
Okay. Any other agenda additions? Okay. Seeing none, there's an announcement. We're having a executive session after this meeting to discuss personnel and negotiations. Procedures for public participation. There's a 3-minute rule. You have to be a resident or a taxpayer of this district. You need to approach the microphone, state your name, your address, and then you have 3 minutes to address the board. Having said that, any presentations by the public on agenda items only at this time, please approach.
Tom Shack, 720 92nd. On item 11D, I mentioned this the last 2 years, and I also mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. Is this allocation of this $450 for the fiscal year 11-12 or 12-13?
11-12.
Okay. Then I'm asking for some board member to move and some other one to second doubling that amount. That would be an extra $450. The next question I have, and the last question I have, is under policy. Number 14M, where it says revise policy 101 to the mission statement. Does that revision change the mission statement or the way the mission statement is going to be handled?
No, it's really to update it. Again, this is part of our policy review. It was an old statement that represented, I don't really remember in that policy the last time it was touched, but it's bringing it up to date with the mission plan as it's listed in the strategic plan now.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the public on agenda items?
My name is Sean Colkerts. I'm at 354 Holman Road in Douglasville. I wanted to address section 201, the revisions. I would just ask that the board carefully consider the changes that are going to be made to that policy because as it stands right now, there is a little bit of flexibility to account for each individual child, and by making any changes that may negatively impact current and future admissions to the Daniel Boone School District. Just wanted to ask for your consideration for the individual and for the children before proceeding with that vote.
Okay, you're referring to policy 201, which is under
14B.
section 14B. Okay.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
This is Nancy Folkerts, 354 Holman Road, Douglasville. I want to comment on the same policy. The way the policy is currently written, it allows children who do not meet the birthday cutoff of September 1st, but's birthday is before November 30th, to allow to be tested to enter kindergarten. The policy, which in its revision, is to state that they are no longer allowed to test children at all. As a parent, I'm sure you all understand that it's completely unfair to a child who could potentially have the ability to go ahead further in school, and why stunt their growth. So I ask you as parents to please consider that.
Thank you.
Do we hold discussion until that comes up for a vote, or is that open for discussion now?
I guess it's up to the board to decide what we want to do. I would say we.
There's no motion.
When we get to that
There's no motion on the table.
Yeah, I mean, there's no motion on the table right now.
Okay. Wait.
I think we'll go pretty quickly between now and then. Any other comments from the public on agenda items? Okay, having seen none, let's move on.
Okay, we have a number of recognitions for this month. We'd like to start out with our TSA conference winners. So for those students, if you would please come forward, and the audience would like to acknowledge them. Caitlin McGregor in our TSA conference took first place in promotional graphic. Caitlin, if you'd like to come forward. Mr. Basil will present you with our award while we continue with the others. We also want to recognize Maddie Weiss and Emily Scott, if they're here, first place team in Techno Talk. Our next three individuals, Amir Aquapa, Brett Berger, and Scott Schilling for first place team in video game design. If you would come forward as well. Congratulations, gentlemen. And finally, Tatiana Rucker-Henderson for first place in PA digital photography. Also like to thank Mrs. Holman, the advisor, and for those of you who are unaware, TSA is the Technology Student Association, and they annually go and compete in these conferences, so they represented Daniel Boone very well. Our second recognition tonight is a huge thank you to the District Art Department, who I see assembled here in the building tonight. And for those of you who had the opportunity to come to the reception that they had out front, I simply would like to extend a thank you to them and all the students who contributed their artwork to this year's art show, which is obviously, if you hadn't had a chance to stop and see on display here at the middle school. So thank you, and how about a nice round of applause for all their work. And a final recognition, we're coming back to give the result. We had 39 students. This is to recognize Harrison Potts again. 39 students represented more than 20 county schools. They competed in this year's Berks County Spelling Bee down on the campus of RAC at the Miller Center for the Arts. Harrison Potts made it to the Final Four, as we're talking these days, and he finished in a tie for third. So we'd like to congratulate Harrison for representing us in this event as well. I think he's home practicing to make it to the Final Two next year. So thank you again, everyone. Again, make sure you take a look at our the student artwork on your way out as you're heading home this evening. And that concludes my report.
Great, thank you. Okay, moving on, routine approvals. It's recommended the Board of Directors approve the minutes of the February 27th school board meeting, the March 12th committee of the whole meeting, and the March 12th special voting meeting.
Make a motion for 8A through C.
Second.
Okay, A through C, we have a second. Mr. Potts is a second, yep. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Yes, I have a motion 8A through C. With Mr. Sheen first, Mr. Potts second. Mr. Seminaro?
Yes.
Mrs. Hamill? Yes. Mr. Kurtz? Yes. Mr. McCullough, yes. Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Potts?
Yes.
Mr. Shaheen?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
And Mr. Basil?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, presentations by board members. Secretary of Correspondence?
I have none.
Okay. BCIU?
Okay, we met on March 15th at the BCIU building. Can you hear me? Right. We met March 15th at the BCIU building. We approved a change to a budget. We approved the minutes from our meeting on February 16th. We authorized an addendum to the agreement for services with general healthcare resources for personal care assistants at licensed colleges. We approved the BCIU child care holiday calendar. We authorized an agreement with Fleetwood Area School District to provide virtual online learning. Students enroll in online learning programs in that district. We authorized an agreement with Winston Communications to work for long-distance telecommunication services. And we also authorized an agreement with Windstream for additional bandwidth for certain districts in the county. And we also authorized an agreement with the Hess Corporation Demand Response Program for BCIU energy usage, similar here in the district. With our demand and response, we can save some money for BCIU through that program. And then we also learned the results of our 2010-2011 financial audit, and everything was good. Everything was clear. And we also learned about the 42nd Annual Convention of Berks County School Directors, which will be held at Awatin Creek Elementary School in Exeter Township on Thursday, May 3rd, 2012. It'll begin at 5:30 with a building tour reception, followed by a dinner buffet at 6:30 p.m. The Keystone speaker at 7:30. I believe that's open to all Berks County School Directors. Of course, if you have any questions, you can feel free to contact me.
Thank you, Mr. Kurtz. BCTC?
Hold on, Mr.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I would like Mrs. Barr's nice enough to know. We did get thank you notes from the middle school girls softball team for providing another coach for them. So again, they were handwritten notes to all our board members. I just want to recognize that and tell them thank you very much for sending them to us. So my apologies, I didn't do it during the Secretary's correspondence.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mr. Wolf, BCTC?
Yeah, I don't have an update. The next meeting of the DRC is scheduled for this Wednesday at 7 o'clock at the East Center. Public's welcome. So, hope to see you there.
Okay. Mr. Sheehan, legislative report?
The only thing I have right now is that either currently is or very shortly House Bill 1776 is going to be submitted. Been getting a lot of emails back and forth from the Daniel Boone Taxpayer Association. I have my doubts, but they're trying to convert many people as far as will it eliminate property tax or will it not. It seems to be the latest effort and probably the closest effort to eliminate property tax if it gets actually put into law. So we'll see what's going on there. What it does do, though, is it does restrict any school district moving forward if it passed and put in place from being able to raise income by taxes. From other taxing methods you give us our money, but we will not be able to raise taxes at a property tax level to secure additional income.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Sheen? Okay, other reports? Anything from facilities?
Nothing from facilities. I'd just like to say I attended the Pennsylvania School Board Association, the Mideast Region 8 meeting on March 15th. Mr. Getzel was there, had a very lengthy meeting. A couple items we did talk about was that they're working with, obviously, House Bill 1329 with the prevailing wage reform. They're working with in-depth in Harrisburg, working trying to restore special education funding. I mean, obviously that we can hold our breath with that, but they are working with that. Had a very nice meeting with the superintendent of Parkland Schools. They're in the same financial boat as us. In the last 3 years, they lost $5 million in revenue. Their projection in business versus residency in that area is 60% residential and 40% commercial. With that, they also obviously have an education foundation, and that's where they're trying to restore that $5 million. So that's one area we need to look at. So hopefully, also one thing they did bring up, they have a buy board, the association has, and I guess we are working with that through BCIU, or is that directly through them?
We don't utilize it at this point, but it's new this year.
Yeah, that might be something to obviously take a look at. That's obviously a national account, so that might be something where we can obviously say some change. That's all I have with that.
Okay. Any other reports?
I would like to report with Dr. Otto and I had
This is revenue enhancement?
Revenue enhancement committee. We had a lunch with Bob New, once again with the Education Foundation, and we put together how Bob was presenting to us how we could start the Education Foundation and break it down into what we would have to come with financially for the investment. And Bob, from the very beginning, said that he would be with us for a year. He would find the new executive director through an interview process. He would be with that executive director for a year, working with that person to get them on track to where we need to be in our fundraising. We would have develop a letter of agreement with Bob and the board, the Daniel Board, and be able to set up installment payments. It won't have to be everything up front. We can break it out. He's very much willing to work with us on this investment process. And basically what we're looking at now is we need to know which direction the board wants to go in and how we're going to work with the present foundation board.
Or the lack thereof.
Pardon me?
They really, it's kind of defunct right now.
Right. So I want to have someone's input on what, I know that we sent an email out with what the proposed amounts were and find out what direction you want to go into. From looking back at the history of when this first started, it was almost 2007 when this was brought up and has not been put forward. So as revenue enhancement, I need to know what you want to do with this proposal, whether you want to go ahead and go forward and put things in place, or do you just want to look for other ways of revenue? We really need to know.
I would say, how do we know? We don't know what this year's budget's going to be yet. We haven't had workshop meetings. You're asking to spend money that we don't know if we have for next year, so I don't see how we right now answer that question until at least we go through more of our budget process to see if we can spend that kind of money before we start getting rid of programs possibly or getting rid of other things.
I understand. Can I just?
Sure.
I understand that. I just wanted to make sure that as we structure this, whatever, if we do decide to do anything, it's an initial cost, but it would be in the form of a loan to and that's what the letter of agreement. But no, I understand.
No, I'm just saying. I agree. I know it's a loan, but still, again, if the foundation never gets off or takes off, the district could possibly be out that money. I think it's too early to discuss that until we know how much we're off on our budget yet.
Should we propose to put it in the budget at this point, and as we get through the workshops, it could ultimately come out? But if we're going
That's a possibility, but I guess we could do that at the, once we have a workshop, I think that you could do that, sure. I just think asking us tonight is not realistic right now.
It's a small dollar amount. I mean, we're not looking at a large dollar amount. I mean, we're looking at being $3.2 million. What, $50,000 is a small amount.
That's elementary school band.
Installments. My bigger concern is, and I'm not, and again, I'm one of 9 here, and I missed the presentation from the other gentleman because I'm not enamored with Bob New.
Correct.
In any way, shape, or form. And that's my concern. When he did his presentation, I thought he was extremely evasive. He didn't answer questions clearly, concise, and to the point. He answered his questions with a question. I do this for a living. I'm a salesman, and I did not appreciate being talked down to, nor the way that he kept evading answers that he asked. And I asked very pointed questions. How much is it going to cost you? And I didn't get straight answers for 2 or 3 times I got it. So I have a big concern of whether he is going to be able to deliver what he said.
Could we go back and look at his references and see if he can deliver?
Sure. I mean, you can do that. Again,
Yes,
we have.
Say it's $50,000, but that's elementary school band.
Yeah, but I think the issue is it's installments.
Again, even if it's installments, you can pause, even if it's, you still got to lay out the money throughout the next fiscal year, which you could save elementary band if we're going to get to that point. Again, I'm not disagreeing we should do it. I just don't know if now's the right time. There's no guarantee we'll get that money back.
What is the time frame? What is the time frame?
I don't know. Maybe when economic times are a little better.
My understanding was, and I'll let revenue enhancement sort of speak to this, but my understanding was you really want to get something up and running pretty quickly so you would have an opportunity to apply for the EITC money that's available before the end of June 1st.
Yeah, but is real quickly, hopefully by the end of June, by the end of April, we'll know where we are with where our budget is. So
I think the issue is one of you have to be up and running and make those applications for that prior to then. So, I don't think this decision, if we're going to try to get this ball rolling and have it ready for a June 1st EITC application, we'd have to, as a board, make that decision within the next couple of weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks at the latest.
We'll be able to make that decision. I mean, we're going to have
hopefully it will work out.
2 meetings in 2 weeks, so finance will have better. I don't disagree that this board, we need a foundation.
Correct.
We need to raise another way of raising income. And if it's 8 to 1, do it, then so far we'll go do it. I have an issue with this
with him personally. Right.
Yeah, right.
Well,
that's the choice.
Part of the issue tonight, what I want to make sure is that to move forward with the current board of our current foundation, to get us if this is something we should look toward doing, regardless of the finances, we need to start initiating conversation with that current board.
We don't have to use that.
They don't,
But
you don't
we
have to
need
use
to know,
that.
can we move forward in
it'd be faster if you didn't have to create another foundation. So I think that
Well,
conversation...
Well, if we have to create another foundation, we'll lose a year.
Well, okay, there's no point ever discussing with the current foundation. Sure, go out of a meeting. But you have to leave it on the table more or less. That doesn't mean it's going to happen. You can always have a conversation, sure. I don't think you need all 9 of us to even get our approval to do that. You guys as a committee can meet with the current foundation. In fact, one of us is on that current foundation.
Yeah.
One of us is a representative, isn't it?
Well, I think Andrew's name
There
is
you
on
go.
the...
No, I'm no longer on the...
Somebody's our current foundation.
Oh, I represent the district
you
as
and
well.
the board member.
Yes.
So there's already one of us on the board foundation.
I think the suggestion would be, why don't we do this, is that if the current foundation representative from the board and Dr. Otto would reach out to the current foundation and lay the groundwork out for a transition.
Correct.
And starting fresh, we'll get that process rolling. I think the other thing would be maybe to go back to Mr. New's references, Dr. Otto, the different school districts that he's already currently working with.
Twin Valley just hired.
Twin Valley, Phoenixville, all the other ones that he's actually have a track record with. Get some feedback from them. You can forward it to the board. That may allay some of Mr. Sheehan's concerns because, if he's a man of action and get the job done,
right.
At the end of the day...
Yeah, he's great to be wrong, who cares?
Right.
If he's going to provide the money.
And so that may be a way of addressing that issue. And then on the third front, when we get to the workshop, I think Mr. Sermonau has a good idea, is putting a placeholder in the budget for funding the foundation, should all these other things come together. That way we're not sitting here waiting for a week or two to make a financial decision.
They may not use the entire amount of seed money.
Well, I think the way they had it scheduled was like $9,000 to start, and then,
Well, actually,
you know,
he was only wanting up front was like $3,600. He wasn't wanting all that money up front. Everything was allowed to be broken down into how it worked with our payment ability.
yeah, I think the issue for us is we're going to be budgeting for a 12-month period. So if he wants all that money at some point in time within 12 months, we need to allocate whatever that dollar amount is.
Right. But we don't have to come up with $9,000 like they
Yeah, no.
Yeah, but you still have to pay it over for the same 12 months.
Right.
I mean, my personal opinion is I think it's a worthwhile investment. If it, I think you can get payback on that within a short period of time, particularly with the EITC credits. I think it's a worthwhile investment. If we don't do it now, it will be another 3 or 4 years before we get this done.
We might not have an option. That might be the case to bring some programs or develop some greater programs at this point.
I mean, if we have to spend more money on the fund balance, then that's where I think we would have to go. But that's just my personal opinion, and we can talk about it more when we get to the budget workshop.
Is there less interest in the other person who came in? I missed that section.
Yeah, he's more of a niche person with the alumni database. He would be somebody that, once the foundation were hypothetically up and running, they would contract with him and maybe use his services to help them build what we were trying to do before.
I clearly was asking him lots of different questions about to what degree he would get involved and assist us with finding, an executive director. And he said, I don't do that. Quite frankly, that's what he just said. He said, I'm involved with creating a database and scrubbing the data and helping you get that established and so on and so forth, and doing mailings and that sort of thing. So,
Well, I'm all for making everyone comfortable with moving forward, but we really have to move quickly.
Right.
We do. We can't wait another month or 2 months or 3 months.
Well, then can Dr. Otto, can you check, not just Great Valley, because it's accepted, so that they still may be in the honeymoon phase, but some of the other districts that have bought into it and have actually been successful with him, and bring it back to us by our
workshop.
When Mrs. Hamill and I met with him, he had explained the places he has been in his success, so we'll just call them to verify it.
I believe Wyomissing has been 1 year.
Phoenixville, he's been there for a couple of years.
Well, he's a Phoenixville resident as
And
well.
I think he also helped
Norristown.
Norristown. There was a couple up in.
mentioned Pottstown.
Yeah, he did mention Pottstown as well.
I think the person who placed in
Pottstown.
Wyomissing went to Pottstown.
Went to Pottstown.
Correct.
Yeah.
No, that's not a problem.
I'd like to see what happens.
We'll come back with that.
Okay. Are there other committee updates?
Yes, I'd like to report to the Policy Review Committee. We met a few weeks ago and we looked over a lot of our bullying policies. We had a lot of constructive feedback from members of the public who attended the committee meeting. We also took a look at 2 policies which we brought forward for approval, and there were some issues on the board. We took them back and we looked at them. And I would like to reiterate that our current policy states that we can speak at the voting meeting even if a motion is not on the floor, according to our current policy. And if we want to change that, we can change it, but I think we need to operate according to our policies in that regard. Additionally, our policy states right now we don't need a second. I believe we're going to continue doing that just because we've always done that, but then again, we have corrected that policy. Now, it will be in our policy that motions require a second, unless it may be state law. Oh, okay, all right. Now it is in our policy that motions require a second, but currently, according to our policy, you can speak about anything, really, when there's no motion on the floor.
But Mr. Kurtz, I think we do it out of control and being able to work in a finite direction.
I'm not debating whether we should or we shouldn't. I'm just saying our policy says right now that we don't need to.
Right, and I understand that, but I think if we don't, then we run into anarchy. So if we have a process that we run and it runs well, we just keep doing it. And if you're changing the process, maybe we should put that into the policy, because it's worked well for years and without issues.
Well, I guess I can respond. We looked into that as a committee, and the recommendation of the committee was to not include that in the policy because there were and I'll get to Mr. Bezos to this, there were issues in the past with board members stating opinions and being shut off, really because they weren't supposed to speak when in fact they could according to policy. And you can always stop debate. You can make a motion to close debate, and then
If there's a motion pending, that's dealing with when a motion is pending. And I haven't looked at your policy regarding these issues. I know you do make reference to Robert's Rules of Order, so you have to cross-reference Robert's Rules.
that's what we did to find out. We use small group rules. And small group rules say we don't need to have a motion or to speak, and we decided to keep that and not change it. So we'll have to talk about that as a full board if we'd like to change that.
I have a question. So, Mr. Zubers, you didn't review these changes? I did not. So, no, wait, we're voting on stuff that our attorney...
No, we're not voting on that. It's first reading.
Okay.
Well, we are voting on it.
So the stuff we're voting on, Mr. Zubers, you have reviewed? I have not reviewed.
We're voting on an A through N, a significant number of policies.
So you have not reviewed them all, Mr. Zubers? I have not. Then, okay.
I guess we're not voting on them.
I guess we're going to be tabling them when we get there.
Okay. I'm just asking a question. By the way, Mr. McLaughlin is a foundation rep.
Okay.
Not to throw you under. I didn't know. I apologize. I didn't know if anybody said anything. I apologize. I didn't know you said you were.
Well, let's get to when we get to the policies, I think some of them are, they're more clerical in nature, some of the changes on some of these things, and I don't know if it necessarily requires a legal review on some of these things. Some of them may require legal review. So when we get to that, we can talk about those issues when we get there. Any other questions on Mr. Kurtz's report? Okay. From Finance Committee, we've got a couple of things on the agenda for tonight. The first one is 11E school lunch. For clarification for the board, what we had found was there was a requirement from the federal government that we need to keep our lunch prices current with the rate with which we're being subsidized by the federal government and reimbursed. And they have a formula in place in which to do that. We took that under consideration. One of the other things we looked at was where the prices were relative to other schools in the county, and we found out that we were really underpriced. And as a result of that, the committee looked at raising those prices accordingly, and those prices are now reflected under 11E. Under 11G, the swap resolution. The swap resolution now reads that when the valuation of the swap gets to $1.5 million in the red, that the board will be notified that it's at that level. And when it reaches $1.3 million, the administration has the authority to terminate the swap. And we came to that number because right now we have about $1.24 million sitting in an interest rate protection fund. And the transactional costs to get out of this thing are probably going to be around $60,000 or so, between 30 and 60. And currently the extra interest payments that we're making on an annual basis have ranged anywhere between $30,000 and a couple $100,000 a year. So we figured, at that point, we're close enough that it's probably worthwhile to get out of this. That's right. The $1.24 million cannot be used for any other purpose in the school district. We can't use them to balance the budget. We can't use them to pay for operating costs. You can't use them for capital expenses. They are set aside specifically for making interest payments towards this particular swap transaction.
There's a last question. I just want to confirm. I'm sure the answer is yes, but I want to make sure. These resolutions have been vetted by the business office and everything's good with them?
Absolutely. Ms. Penza, do you have anything you want to add? Okay. The last thing that we talked about was, to some degree, construction funding. The money that's been left over from our capital improvements over the last few years is around $900,000 or so, and one of the issues was in what manner can that money be used going forward. And We've all received a legal opinion from our bond counsel, and actually I'm going to ask Mr. Subers to sort of comment on that so we know how those funds can be used during these budget discussions going forward. In addition to that, we've been talking with the Facilities Committee on what our capital needs are going forward and how these funds might be able to be used to address those capital needs as well. So, Mr. Subers.
Yes, as indicated in the prior opinion, pursuant to the Internal Revenue Code, the district is required to, when borrowing monies, have a reasonable expectation that it will spend at least 85% of those proceeds within 3 years. If those proceeds remain after that 3-year period, then the district would be required to expend those proceeds in one of 3 ways. Other capital projects, which were originally included in the finance resolution, this resolution was broadly worded to include other capital projects approved by the board. New capital projects not previously authorized or redeeming or defeasing the notes. But the one thing you can't do is just hold the money in this account balance. And unless you have a planned capital project and plan on using this money in a reasonably short time, you can't just hold on to those monies. You also can't use the monies to pay interest on the debt, and you can't use it for debt service payments. But you can use it to redeem bonds, and it just so happens that one of the bonds subject to this series matures on August 15th of 2012 in the amount of $790,000 principal amount. So you can take $790,000 out of that capital fund and use it to redeem this bond, the principal amount of that bond, on August 15th, 2012. You'd have to pay for the interest that's due on that bond, but that's something you'd have to pay for anyway. But that would substantially reduce the balance in that construction fund or the balance of those unused proceeds. And we really want to be careful to adhere to these expenditure requirements because the one thing that the IRS is trying to prevent is they want to prevent municipal bodies from borrowing more monies than they actually need. So if you do that, we did have a reasonable expectation of using these monies. The projects that were subject to that those bond issues or that came in under budget. So we saved monies during construction. But you can't just bank that money. Now you have to use it to either fund other present projects or defease bonds.
So financially, what would be the best move of that money? I mean, from the business office end of it, reduced bond debt. So moving down to a future that $790,000 is no longer part of our debt load, correct?
Just for 12-13.
Well, let me ask you, that's the question I was a little unclear on. Are we paying down the principal, or are you just making a principal payment?
This is you're paying off one particular bond.
So we spend $7 million a year on debt service payments. And I guess I think it's in 2 payments, correct? One's in October or whatever it is, the other one's in April.
There's several different dates.
Okay, so I guess my question is, it's one thing to sit there and say, okay, well, I'm going to pay down $95 million of debt. I'm going to spend $790,000 and make that $94 million of debt. Overall, my debt service payment doesn't change much. Okay, it goes from $7 million to $690,000. Okay, or something to that effect, maybe $695,000 or $6,950,000. But I guess, or what you're saying here is you're actually going to take, instead of $7 million, you're actually going to take $1 million or $790,000 off the table as part of that payment just this one time. Is that what you're saying?
It kind of works out
one
to
of
be
the
the same.
options with this.
It works out because this bond is maturing in August. You can use it to reduce next year's debt service payment for 1 year. For the 1 year, yeah, you're using or capital, or we can
identify capital projects
and spend the money.
But we have to spend the money on those capital projects.
Can we split it?
When you said make this right away, within that fiscal year?
You're getting
as soon
close.
as possible is what our
Can we-
strong recommendation is.
Can we spend it as soon as possible or identify the capital projects?
Spend it, because we're past the 3-year time period. And we want to, I mean, this is something that was unexpected. You have time to, but you just can't sit on it. You can't identify a project and then sit on that money until you're ready to do the project. You have to identify the project, and we really should be proceeding with the project.
So the other 150, if you were to use 790 out of the 900, was it 924,000 or something like that? If the other $150,000 that you have available, you would have to use immediately on a capital project. What happens if you don't?
There's no set time frames.
Yeah.
What the risk is that the IRS
What are the tax consequences? Yeah, well, what are the tax consequences?
if it's found to be, and I'm reducing it from $1 million to $100,000 changes
The overall
scope of
tax
the
impact,
issue.
right?
By not adhering to these overissuance rules, you jeopardize the tax-exempt status of the bonds, which you cannot.
All the bonds or
All
just
the bonds,
okay? Well, that's
which
a
you
big deal.
cannot do.
Can you split the money then? That 924,000, we can use half on capital projects, half on, you know what I mean? Can we?
I think you have to pay down the full. You can't pay down half the bond,
Once you pay down the full 790,000.
Yes.
Right. What was
As long as
left
you
can
pay
be
it off
used.
with other funds.
Right. The understanding is as soon
Still
as,
spend the money.
You're still spending money.
So you can't spend like roughly 450,000 on capital project and 450,000 on.
Well, you can,
Well, you can, but you're still going to have to pay off that bond.
We're still to pay off. We're going to look at that. Okay.
The other
We're gonna
450.
different. Okay, I understand.
but
I'm
the
sorry.
important point there is, according to bond counsel, if the board would make that decision to spend 450 of those funds, we would have to take that other 320
Correct, out of-
or 340
Okay, I got you.
out of the general fund
Gotcha.
immediately. We're talking 11-12 school year. We're not talking 12-13.
Correct. To pay off the. Okay, got
She's
it.
saying those
Deposit
monies
with
have to be in the
bank
sinking fund
Fund.
ASAP, so that
In
would come
order-
out of 11-12.
Okay,
so you
gotcha.
see even more
Okay.
Right.
Okay. you
use of
answered.
fund balance.
Correct. So it's basically 790 or not.
All or nothing.
Basically, we're leaving over 135,000 left.
Does this require a motion on how the board wants to use that money, or does
I
that
think-
come as a recommendation from the finance committee and then?
The Finance Committee hasn't made any recommendation on this because, quite frankly, we were discussing, we're under the impression you can use it any way you wanted to, as long as it was either for capital projects or for debt service payment for 1 year, so to speak, and you could use any percentage that you wanted. This information has come out subsequent to that meeting, so there is no recommendation from the Finance Committee at
It
this
seems like
point.
it makes sense to use it to reduce the debt service and use the balance on an immediate capital need, which we know we have.
Well, that's originally the way it was worded when our auditors mentioned it to us. That was the wording they used, reducing debt service. And when we had a subsequent conversation with Mr. Subers, we just wanted to make sure we were all on the same page with the terminology as to exactly what it meant to make use of those funds.
It
So
almost
that's
seems like your obligated first choice to go and pay down.
Unless you had some outstanding capital needs that you could address pretty quickly. I mean, we have 3 chillers that are
We have 3 children.
failing at the
$330,000.
BEC building, right? $450,000 worth of.
What else do we have where its life expectancy is due up within the next 24 months that we might be able to
Well, we're still
take care of
studying,
sooner?
you're still studying that high school roof.
The roof, that's right. There's the roof.
And there's about 5.
Mr. Subers, do you want to explain for the board the concept that we talked about with the useful life? I think that's important in this conversation.
Yeah, it's not a simple concept, but one of the requirements for the use of bond proceeds, the capital projects that you would spend those proceeds on, must have a useful life equivalent to the term of the bonds. So if it's a 30-year bond, the capital project that you fund with that bond must have a useful life of 30 years. Now, some of these bonds are scheduled to expire. It gets a little complicated because some of the bonds mature earlier. So, and what you can do if you wanted to go out and fund your chillers and they don't have a 30-year useful life, but they have a 15-year useful life, well, we'd have to look at it. But we anticipate being able to allocate proceeds from those bonds which mature earlier to that portion of the capital project so that it would be in compliance that way. But you can't finance something which doesn't have a reasonably long useful life. And the only reason we could do this is because, 90% of the proceeds or we've constructed a capital project that has a useful life of.
But didn't is that a constraint from the IRS, or is that a constraint from the bond agreements? Because when I read the prospectuses for the different bond issues, they just said they could be spent for any capital project, and they defined capital expenses as any asset with a life expectancy greater than 3 years.
This is an IRS.
It's an IRS constraint. Okay.
IRS issues.
So it looks like it makes sense that we already more or less understand we got to run the debt service down. We just need to decide what we're going to do with the rest.
So theoretically, you could put one of the 3 chillers.
You could fund one of the 3.
I'm just asking. Theoretically, that would create enough long life to satisfy the requirements, Mr. Supervisor. Right?
That's correct.
Okay.
We want to look at it, but we think that would work.
And if you didn't find a capital need, what do you do with the money then?
Defease the bonds.
You have to defease the bonds.
Right. Well, you can, if you see, we have a bond that's mature, so we're going to use it to pay off that bond. If you didn't, you would actually have to deposit those monies with your paying agent and defease the bonds that way.
Right. Okay.
You can't hold the money.
Yeah, right. Does anybody have any other questions on this? And essentially, we have a month or 2 to make a decision on this stuff. It's not like it's life or death.
Right. We would want it to
The IRS could be here tomorrow.
we would want it to proceed as expeditiously as possible.
Sure.
And part of our rationale administratively, we know we're going to be heading into some budget workshops, and we wanted to be clear on how this what it might do and what its impact is on the eventual resolution of the budget this year.
Can I ask the Building and Grounds Committee try to come up with a game plan what's their need to do the 135,000, whatever?
Yeah, I think Mr. Smith
what's
is already.
What's the priority list? Excuse me.
Well, right now we're looking at 330,000.
That's what you need, but I'm saying is, if the board elects to do Mr. Shaheen's move to pay down debt service, that leaves you with roughly 135,000.
That would pay one chiller.
Okay, but is that your first priority?
Yes.
Okay.
From a facility standpoint, we've been obviously alerting the board to this for a period of time here, at least a year, maybe longer.
This isn't a must. This number 2 chiller is down.
We're at a critical. At some point, we could be coming back to you and saying we've got an emergency on our hands.
But that's what I'm asking. If that's their priority, okay, of 135,000 roughly. Okay.
Yeah, the chillers. They're about 139, 140 apiece.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just a reminder too, there is money in capital reserve. This is different
I understand
than
that.
capital
Right. I understand that, but they could maybe get one month.
Okay. Any other questions on that? Any other questions on anything to do with finance? Actually, I just want to, while we're here, why don't we just talk about 2 other things. So one was the budget workshop dates, and everybody got it back to me, and I'm thinking if people don't have any objections, it looks like April 4th works for everyone, and April 11th, with the exception of Mr. Sermonero, because he's going to be out of town.
I'm sorry, the 4th and the 11th?
The 4th and the 11th.
Thank you.
And why don't we say 7 o'clock? And can we do it here? Yes. Okay.
I have a quick question about that. Will we be doing it in the auditorium or in the...
We'll be doing it here.
Okay.
If we can do it here. I mean, it depends. I think it's more comfortable if the public's here. If there's a conflict, then we'll go somewhere else.
All right, thank you.
And what we're going to try to do also is Ms. Penz is going to put together for the older board members the budget workshop sheet that we used last year, where we basically put in what our anticipated revenues are, what our anticipated expenses are, and then the administration will put together a list of all the different options that we have available in terms of cuts, what our options are available in terms of fund balance and taxes, so that we have everything on one page with which to work. And there'll be, in the past, we kind of had a red light, green light, yellow light sort of system where the administration sort of green lighted certain recommendations to us that they felt comfortable with. There was other ones that were under the yellow light, which was hey, look, these are things that are questionable, and then other ones that we asked for the numbers, but it wasn't something that the administration was recommending. But we wanted to know what those options were in case we had to get there. So we'll use a similar format, and Ms. Penza, when do you think you'll have something available for the board?
As soon as possible. We'll have it. We can have it for this weekend.
Okay, because we'd like to get it out sooner, because if board members have questions about it, or they want to add things, or take, whatever, that Ms. Penza has time to get that feedback from board members and then in turn respond. We don't want board members calling her up to the last minute with ideas or suggestions and that sort of thing, and she's not going to be able to get that ready for us and back to us for our input by the budget workshop meeting date. So,
may I just add a comment relative to, since you under old business, just to remind again for the public that hasn't heard, in case you didn't, the state did approve our 3 curtailment resolutions, and they also will be factored into our conversations during the budget workshops. Just as a reminder again, the state has given us approval. The board obviously hasn't acted on any of them yet, to reduce the elementary band program, to reduce the middle school world language program, and also to reorganize our elementary teaching staff to the degree that we could potentially, with an analysis of enrollment, furlough elementary teachers as well. So that's really why I had that on the agenda. Just wanted to put a general reminder out that that will be factored into our conversation and any information that we give you.
Can you factor in the foundation expense?
yeah, we'll
Sure.
add that to it.
Can someone tell me what that is?
Ms. Hamill will send that to
You
you.
don't have to do it now, Mrs. Hamill, but give her all the details.
I'll help with that.
If we can get that, do you think you guys can get that out like by Wednesday night?
My part's done. I just need the
Okay,
red light, green light stuff. So
okay.
mine is
But
separate. So.
can you add the foundation in fairness to Mrs. Hamill?
Yeah. And if board members have other things, when we get the list out, you'll have an opportunity to look it over and say, well, wait a minute, what about this or what about that? And then, get those suggestions in, and we just want to make sure the administration has enough time to get that on the list and figure out what those costs are and that sort of thing, so that when we sit down at the budget meeting, we all know what we're looking at and talking about. Okay? And I'll send around last year's, so you guys can sort of see what, to the new board members, so you can sort of see what we were dealing with and what we were working with. So you're at least familiar with it. Okay.
I have a quick question for the budget workshop. Will public comment be allowed?
We typically have allowed public comment usually at the end, but it's a workshop, and the purpose of the workshop is to get some work done. And so we'll start the meeting at 7 o'clock. We'll go through the workshop, and at the end of it, we'll allow for some public input. Okay.
And they're estimated to have a time you want to...
I'm thinking 7 to 10 at the latest. I don't think we need to be here any more than 3 hours, particularly with the initial one. And if it lasted that long, I might be a little surprised. But there could be some things in there that we need to talk about at great length. So, okay. Moving on, buildings and grounds. Nothing.
We talked about the chillers.
All right. Financial approvals.
11A through H with the exception of D.
A through H with the exception of D.
I'd like to take HVACs on also.
Okay. A through G with the exception of E.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Yes, Mr. Wolf.
It's D and H, or is it?
D and H. D and H.
No, the motion is A through G, no D.
A through G, no D.
Right.
Correct.
Right?
All of the letters.
That's what I heard.
No, D
That's
and
what I
H.
heard.
Everybody
A
knows.
through G, no D.
No D.
Okay.
Okay. Any comment on those items? All right. Can we get a roll call vote then?
Again, it's 11A through G, no letter D. Mr. Seminaro first and Mr. Wolf second. Mrs. Hamill?
Yes.
Mr. Kurtz?
Yes.
Mr. McCullough, yes. Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Potts?
Yes.
Mr. Sheen?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
Mr. Seminaro?
Yes.
And Mr. Basil?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Do I have a motion for 11D?
11D, I'd like to make a motion to amend that to, based on Mr. Schatz's recommendation, to $900.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay. Seeing no discussion, can we get a roll call vote?
I have 11D. The motion is for 11D, the amounts, but double the amounts, I'm sorry, from Mr. Seminaro first, Mr. Wolf second, Mr. Kurtz. Mr. McCullough, yes. Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Potts?
Yes.
Mr. Shaheen?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
Mr. Seminaro?
Yes.
Mrs. Hamill?
Yes.
And Mr. Mason?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, 11H.
Make a motion for 11H.
This is the support staff contract agreement.
Second. Okay. Just to give a little bit of details, a one-year agreement. The current contract expires at the end of this school year, so it's a one-year agreement. It is at a zero increase for next year. Everything is flat. No increase either in seniority or cost of living. And they are rewording the seniority. Nobody seems to understand how it got to where it was in the existing agreement, but we are rewording the seniority by job description. So if you're a secretary, you go from part-time to full-time and full-time to part-time. Your seniority is as a date of hire, not by your job classification, which is where it was previously, which runs into the problem we had last year. And I believe the supervisors are pretty big.
That's it. That's correct.
Okay, so we have first, we have a second. We got a little discussion there. Any other questions?
Oh, can we do discussion still?
Yeah.
I'd just like to thank Mr. Shahini and the negotiating committee. I think this was a good job on their part.
This will save us approximately between 110 and 120 ballpark amongst friends on the budget for next year.
You should also thank.
And I also want to thank the support staff for working with us on this. It's a big deal, and
Two
it
very
helps us
quick
out.
meetings, and we really get it done.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a very big deal. So we want to thank them. If they're in the audience, we appreciate their working with us on that.
And one-year contracts, you can always go back and change them. You're not stuck with them.
Okay, do we have any other comments? Okay, seeing none, can we get a roll call vote, please?
It's 11H. Mr. Sheen first, Mr. Wolf second. Mr. McCullough, yes. Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Potts?
Yes.
Mr. Sheen?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
Mr. Seminaro?
Yes.
Mrs. Hamill?
Yes.
Mr. Kurtz?
Yes.
Mr. Basil?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, great. Moving on to 12.
Well, A. Second.
Don't forget the amendments.
Right, everyone remembers the two amendments to A and B. Sorry about that. A1B should say as needed, and A1C should say Diana Kaplan, librarian, unpaid leave of absence, March 13th, 2012, until approximately June 30th, 2012, as needed. Bless you. Okay. Got a first, second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Yes, it's all of number 12. Mr. Sheen first. Mr. Kurtz, I believe. Second.
Mr. Seminaro.
Mr. Seminaro. Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Potts?
Yes.
Mr. Shaheen?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
Mr. Seminaro?
Yes.
Mrs. Hamill?
Yes.
Mr. Kurtz? Yes. Mr. McCullough, yes. And Mr. Basil?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, moving on to 13A. This is High School French Club trip to Paris.
Motion for 13A. Second. Again, the only reason we're approving voting on this is that they are not only leaving the state, but
Correct.
no cost to us.
No cost to the school district, that's right. Okay, any other comments? Okay, seeing none, can we get a roll call vote,
I have
please?
a first by Mr. Sheen, second by Mr. Potts. Mr. Potts?
Yes.
Mr. Shaheen?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
Mr. Seminaro?
Yes.
Mrs. Hamill?
Yes.
Mr. Kurtz?
Yes.
Mr. McCullough, yes. Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
And Mr. Basil?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, moving on to 14.
I'm not sure, I mean,
Let's talk about this in general before we actually make any motions here. So we have a considerable number of policies that are on here that have been up for a couple of months, but obviously the solicitor has not had an opportunity to review them. And so the question is, does the board want to table these until the solicitor has an opportunity to look them over?
I make a motion to table A through N briefly until we're able to look at them.
Correct.
Bring them back up next month.
A through N with the exception of O? P, Q, R, S, T, U?
Those are first
Those are
readings.
first readings.
Oh, first readings, right, sorry.
So I'm assuming I should be reading the ones that are up for
I
first
think
reading.
you got eight.
Well, you've seen those first readings.
Again, nothing against the policy
I
committee.
bet you were a PhD.
Nothing against the policy committee. I just feel more comfortable that our solicitor reviewed them for language and everything else prior to voting on them.
Well, the policy committee didn't review all of these policies either.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought they did.
Specifically, I wanted to talk about 201. I don't know if
We can still talk about 201, sure.
But no, wait, there's still a motion though.
No,
Okay,
Has there been a formal motion to table?
I did make a motion to table.
Okay,
There's a
so a
first.
second.
Mr. Cole, second.
Okay,
Okay,
so
now
let's do that and we'll talk about, okay, we have a first and a second. You want to talk about 201?
yes, 201. This one was brought to my attention just recently by Mr. and Mrs. Fulkers when they spoke earlier this evening regarding the change to this policy. And I need to understand it better. I'm not comfortable from what I understand the change to this policy to be, which is at this time, children who fall between the September 1st and the November timeframe for their birth date have the opportunity to be tested and accepted into kindergarten. And the new change to this policy eliminates that completely.
Can I ask one thing? I think Mrs. Mikowski is there. I don't want to bring you up, but can you explain to the board members exactly what that entails? Okay, it's early
Just
admission
to speak to the testing process.
Early admission testing. If not, Dr. Otto can do it.
Well, before she speaks to that,
Okay.
explain the
Sorry.
reason behind eliminating it.
Well, that's why I think since she... Okay, go ahead, Dr. Otto.
Basically, this recommendation did come from the special ed department, from the principals, from the counselors. They had found that there are really two parts to it, and I understand both sides of it, but I think we're trying to balance our efficiencies with trying to stay within our mandated timelines, because our psychologists not only would do testing for this group of students, but they would also do testing for all the students who qualify for special education consideration. And we have a clock that starts ticking, and if we fall out of compliance with that, we can open ourselves up to litigation. So the team that brought forward this recommendation, which included the elementary principals, Mrs. Trainer and Mrs. Mikowski, put us in a position where we were not finding that we were having a lot of success in testing the students who were coming forward for this, to the degree that it's only a 1 or 2% success rate for the bar that students have to meet to be able to admit it early beyond the district's normal early admission age.
Can you please explain what that bar is?
It's a number of characteristics. The most difficult one to meet is that the student has to test on the psychologist test 2 years chronologically above their current age. It's a very, very high standard to hit. It's probably actually higher than the gifted standard. And we have found that and this is not particular to Daniel Boone, I'd seen this in other places where it was changed, that in a lot of ways it sets the student up and the family in some sense for a little bit of disappointment when they don't meet that high standard. And to the degree, again, that we said it's only about a 1-2% success rate with that. So I understand, you can look at that on the other side and say, why would you want to deny any child the possibility? I guess my only response to that would be that at some point you have to have a cutoff somewhere. So that's what we were looking at when we eliminated that early testing portion of it.
Doctor, let's put it in perspective. How many children come in? When you're talking about 1 or 2%, but we're going to get 4 or 5 kids that come in.
No, 1 or 2%.
Less than that.
1 or 2% make.
I know, but
it varies, and I don't have, and we can certainly get you that information.
The number I heard was 25, for example, or 25 kids.
Okay. How much does it cost the district to test that child per child?
I don't have. I mean, that's an overhead cost, but there is time involved, absolutely.
But you're turning your back on a child who is excelling and has the opportunity
the potential
to come in, and now they're going to have to go back to a preschool and sit with underdeveloped children for another year. It's not helping that child.
Sure.
And that's where it comes down to
that is what's going to happen.
It comes down to the cutoff issue. If they would go a week past that date, they wouldn't even be eligible for that earlier. So at some point it becomes a cutoff question.
This changed back in 2001, 2002?
Yes.
Because my daughter, my youngest daughter, missed it by 15 days.
My daughter missed it by 4.
But then we wanted to challenge it, And basically what we were told is it was made so that almost nobody could pass it.
But the school district.
Let me clarify that.
Set those guidelines out.
I don't think we don't want anybody to pass it. We just want to make sure that someone's not improperly placed. Let's be very clear about that. It's not our goal to set a child up for failure. And we do not certainly want someone who is there that with another year of development at home and in a preschool, they're going to come to school and be very successful. On both sides of this issue, you have to be very careful about early placement, that it could also turn around and backfire on a child. So I just wanted to clarify that comment, that it's really about proper placement decisions, and we want to make sure that every child is properly placed. We're certainly not trying to exclude anyone. We're not trying to leave anyone out, but we owe it to the families to make sure that we do our due diligence in making sure they're properly placed. And that's really what this is all about.
The only question is, you're right, it's 25 a year is now, maybe average, whatever. What happens if it ends up being 100 to 150?
Yeah.
Again, that's what
I don't know that would happen.
But that's gonna be a cost to the district to test 100 to 150 students.
Wait, let's be realistic. You're not gonna, if you're gonna test 150 students that I mean, let's break down the reality of, if you have 150 students that fit into that criteria, you then went and doubled our kindergarten class size. And we're gonna have more school psychologists. We're gonna have more classes.
I mean,
let's not look at 150. I mean, I'm more concerned that we have. I mean, my daughter's in the same boat that everybody else was. Her birthday was at the end of September. We held her back, and it wasn't a bad deal for us. I think it definitely was a better move for her. But if there is somebody that can pass it, I think you need to give that child a chance.
Well, let me just interrupt for 1 second. I know you're standing up here waiting to speak. Unfortunately, we're not going to take public comment at this time. It's a voting meeting, so we're only taking public comment at the very beginning of the meeting on agenda items, and then at the end of the meeting, which hopefully will be very shortly, you'll have an opportunity to address the board. So if you just want to sit and wait for a few minutes, we'll go there. I think the one question I had about this, and let me just say, I want to apologize because this was put in front of the board in February. I'm getting some feedback here. This was put in front of the board in February, and I didn't obviously take a really close look at this as well. And perhaps should have. And so we can talk about how these sort of things are coming in front of the board, what a better methodology might be so that the bigger changes are sort of, we get a summary of that, because we get hit with a lot of these things at once, and we may not always have the time to review every single one of these things and understand how they're changing prior to
we had requested that they be bolded, made in red so that they'd stick out in the version.
Yeah, I think the other part of it too was that there are certain things the administration was going to sort of take the lead on, and if it had to do with state law and stuff like that, they were just going to administratively take care of that. But something where we have a more substantive change, obviously I think it's going to be helpful if the policy committee has an opportunity to kind of vet that first. But having said that, I guess what I'm curious about is, you have a early admission for first grade. What's the difference by keeping that in place versus the kindergarten? I didn't understand.
Because at first grade is considered age of beginner. There's a different policy for that. So you can, if students do not have to, remember, kindergarten is not mandatory. Right. So students can, a parent can present a child to the school district at the age of beginner, which is first grade. Mm-hmm. So we would still put that, and then the students are a little bit more developed. They've had more time at home with their parents. So
this is more of an issue because kindergarten is not a mandatory.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, we have an age of beginners at 5 years old for kindergarten. If you notice for first, that's age of beginners, that's 6 years old, and that's in the school code.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So
I just wanted that clarification.
Just to reiterate, because kindergarten's not mandatory, we make our own rules.
You can do that.
Yes.
You can do that.
Although the school code does not allow you to enter a student without special exception before the age of 5, if I'm correct, Mr. Subers?
It's 4 to 6.
4 to 6, okay.
The one last thing I'd like to add is...
But it's your discretion anywhere in between 4.
Right, and the way our policy is written right now, that's age 5.
The one thing I would like to say is, again, Dr. Otto, and again, I'm not saying I'm for or against this. Dr. Otto vetted it through people who are in education. There had to be a reason why they wanted this date changed. Again, I don't know if Dr. Otto, wants to go into that detail, but they brought it before us to recommend it, so there must be a reason to do this.
Again, I would just say for me,
from an educational point of view.
From what I said earlier, to me, it's about making sure, all the way through the school system, K through 12, it's our job to advise parents and advise students along the way of what our best advice is for placement. This is a placement issue, and we believe that the system that we put in place is, again, it's going to exclude a few students. I mean, I can't say that that won't happen based on the calendar. I mean, we can't control when a child is born. So we're looking at, and we believe, and if you would like to have other people come forward in the event you're going to go ahead and table this and have the principals and the counselors and the psychologists speak to their experience with that, that might be, you know, a good thing to do to educate you further with this. But I can just tell you it's definitely about placement, and we want to make sure we properly place students.
What I would like, again, I'm all about numbers, okay? What I would like to see is if you can give us over the last 2 or 3 years, the number of students that applied for it, the number of students that took that test, and the numbers that passed. And again, if we know it's about numbers, but if we had 75 students over the last 3 years do it, and nobody made the numbers, then, yeah, okay, now I can understand why we do it. But if we had 75 do it and 3 or 4 each year make it through the numbers or whatever it would be, then I would, you know, tend to lean toward maybe, you know, keeping it in place. But
we'll do whatever is the flavor of the board. That's fine.
If we're testing somebody, as Mr. Wolf said, we're putting a test out that nobody can pass, then why go through the process of doing it? But if you're doing it and there are children that are academically advanced enough to be able to test 2 years above, and we get a number, and we get a few of them that make it through, then I'm going to be inclined to vote, let's leave it there. But if we have, in the last 3 years, nobody make it through, then let's change.
Can we also ask how they're doing in 2nd and 3rd grade?
Right, and that would be follow-up.
And again, I'm not asking for a report 50 pages thick, but I think your request is valid, but I also want to know how they did 2 years out.
It shouldn't be that hard to follow those numbers. You got it.
We'll take that back to the policy.
Can you bring that, I mean, that's exactly what I was going to say. If you could bring that back to the policy committee, because it's going to meet next.
Because they might be
I'd like to
okay.
make a recommendation that go to curriculum and instruction. I mean, that sounds more like the...
Yeah, to me too.
That's actually probably a better idea.
That's a better idea.
How's this any... One question. What if the students' parents decide to take them to an independent tester? Have them tested by a psychologist?
They still have to be tested by ours.
So even if they came back with a...
What we generally do is, and that happens in special education a lot, our general MO there is to take that information, if the parents will give it to us, and factor it into the final report, but we'd never like to give up our right to do the testing as well.
And if there's any way to incorporate any of their, academically, they might be okay, but again, it's not just an academic thing, it's also, they're almost a year behind most of the kids in their class. Are they 2nd and 3rd grade emotionally able to stay with their class? Again, I'm just asking those questions. I mean, you have to take into consideration their emotional thing in 3rd or 4th grade, because now you have people that are, you know.
Well, how is this any different, basically, than when you get into like the higher, you know, some of the high school classes that my daughter was scored high, but not quite high enough for honors, and to get into honors, we had to sign a waiver to take responsibility. A parent would know best, if they're going to be honest, how if their kid is ready for kindergarten or first grade.
And I agree with that, Mr. Wolf, but that's only kindergarten. That's why I say when they're 3rd or 4th grade.
Curriculum and instruction. We'll get some data, and we'll come back to the board with a recommendation, or the policy committee with a recommendation. That's how it should go.
And you can share that with us at the committee of the whole as well, so we can.
Well, there won't be we do not have school nor is any of our support functions around this first Thursday of the month, so we're going to have to schedule.
This, I mean, it's not a critical mass. I mean, we can take time to have the conversation.
Yeah.
We will go forward with the people that have submitted under the old policy, so we'll just move forward the way we are, and nothing has changed, obviously, until the board votes, so we'll just move forward as we have been.
Okay. Any other discussion on policy?
All of these other policies that Mr. Subers is going to review, are these going to get pushed to the next voting meeting?
They would have to.
They would have to.
Vote on it at the committee of the whole.
Well, you can vote them on the committee of the whole. It is a voting meeting.
Well, it depends on what, well, no, yeah, Mr. Subers won't be here to tell us this.
Well, he can send us an email.
Well, he can do that.
I think it would be good to kind of keep the voting meetings as voting meetings.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I would also say that none of those policies, I mean, these have been sitting for a long time.
Nothing's urgent that I think we can.
There's nothing urgent there.
Because
a lot of them really were a lot of editing and rewording that we did. There wasn't any legal site changes, so I think Mr. Subers could probably review them in a couple hours.
Now that waiting for the voting meeting?
Or less. No pressure. No pressure.
Waiting for the voting meeting, we can ask Mr. Subers questions, not just through emails. if we have any questions
Yeah.
on his email.
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to know if there's time.
No, I agree, but at least we can ask him that if he's here.
Look, it's at our option, so whether we want to take some of these down as he completes them, it doesn't have to be all of them, but certainly at the
If he
next.
doesn't have them all done by the next voting meeting, then let's just vote on
I'm just saying, at the committee of the whole meeting, there may be 4 of them or 5 of them that he's vetted and we're okay with, and we can just move those through. Because at the end of the day, you're going to be looking at, 30 or 40 of these things coming out at once.
Yeah, well, you and Mr. McCullough want to put it on the agenda if you feel comfortable doing that. Do it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other comments on that? Okay, transportation, anything?
Nothing.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
Transportation will be meeting Thursday, so we'll be meeting with them and having a friendly first discussion.
Okay, great. Are you guys coming to the table with like ideas and things of that nature? Last time they had already had some ideas to share.
Around a little bit.
Okay. Okay, great. Old business. Updated follow-up discussion on election regions.
Oh, I'm sorry. The Economic Revitalization Committee met earlier this evening. We think we came up with a plan that we're going to present to you guys, the committee of the whole. We want to settle the numbers on, look at some of the numbers of the district. We're going to come up with a recommendation to redistrict the school district for the next upcoming election. But just to prepare yourself, we think we came to a resolution between the 3 of us to present to you guys. If you guys vote on it, then we'll submit it to a judge. So we'll have more details in the committee of the whole.
Okay. Any questions from Mr. McCall on that? All right. How are we doing with this list of activities and sports stuff on the website?
It'll be off by next month.
Okay. Did you have anything you wanted to add on curtailment resolution?
No, I think we obviously said what I think I needed to say there for now.
Okay. We talked about the budget workshop dates under new business. Sorry.
Just to reiterate, there is no curriculum committee next week because school is not here, Mrs. Trainer is not here.
Okay. Well, we're closed the first Thursdays.
We met on dates we've been closed before, but it is the holidays.
Okay. Under new business legal opinions, I just wanted to bring this up from a procedural perspective. This seems to be something that keeps coming up year after year, at least since I've been sitting in this seat, is how board members interact with our solicitor independently or as a group. And I guess I just want to get some sort of consensus from the board going forward as to how we're going to operate. And this has probably been an issue since as long as I've been on the board, probably, where do we want to have, I guess what I just want to know is how do we want individual board members interacting with our solicitor? Can anybody pick up the phone at any time and just call the solicitor and ask a question? Or should that person be first copying Dr. Otto or talking to Dr. Otto first before doing that? If you're a chairman, should the chairman have the unilateral authority to just pick up the phone and call the solicitor, or should they also talk to Dr. Otto or the president or the vice president, whoever? I just want to get sort of this idea because in the past this has been an issue where, and I'm guilty of it as well, where I picked up the phone and just called Mr. Subers when I had a question about something.
Bring that up, but yeah.
And well, I've done it. Look, when I was a board, my first or second year, I picked up the phone, I called him about an issue that I had a question on, and then I got an email from Mr. Fiddler saying, hey, look, guys, this is racking up our bills, so be careful about picking up the phone. And so I just want to get a consensus of how we want to do this as a board going forward so we're all playing by the same rules. And if you are getting information from the solicitor, are we sharing that information then with the other 9 board members?
Again, I think committee chairs, depending upon what committee you have to be able to get a hold of the solicitor. And I'm not sure you are able to share some of what you get from him right away, like with the meet and discuss or the negotiation committee. You can't necessarily. I can't wait to talk to you or Dr. Otto if I have something I'm working on and I need to call. But at the same time, I get something back from Mr. Subers. I can't then go out to the 9 of you or the other 8 and say this is what I got back because we're still working on it. So I think it depends upon the committee. I mean, let's face it. The revenue enhancement has probably very little need to contact Mr. Subers on an ongoing continual basis, whereas policy probably should periodically. Transportation, once they get something done,
Well, the difference,
Here's
I
it,
think, the
wait.
big difference there is we all have Dr. Otto in those committees.
Right.
You don't
Right.
discuss.
Right.
So
But
you've got an issue there with meet and discuss.
But here's the other thing is, Mr. Zubers is retained for certain things. Policy is part of your retainer, correct? So therefore, that committee should have no problem. That committee, if you call up a question about a policy, any 9 of us, if it's a question about clarification on a policy, we should all have that right to talk to Mr. Zubers personally because it's part of retainer. There's no additional cost to the district.
I think
And
the issue
understand
is just understanding what is part of the retainer
Well,
and what
that's
isn't.
different.
And then
Okay, that's different.
you have that part of it. And the other part of it then too is, okay, well, should our superintendent be in the loop with some of these
that's true,
conversations versus out in the dark and not understanding why board members are making calls?
And I agree with that, but I think if it's something under his retainer that he's already covered for, I think any 9 of us should be able to call. And maybe we talk Dr. Otto about it, but I think we have a right to do that.
I think all 9 board members should have access to the solicitor. I'm not saying that shouldn't be the case, because quite frankly, nothing beats a phone call. Whatever he says may spark 9 other questions that you may have.
Correct.
Whereas if he just responds with an email, well,
Correct.
it's a little bit more difficult to get the information you want. I'm not saying we need to somehow filter or censor access. I'm just trying to figure out what the procedure should be, so that we're all on the same page. Everybody understands what the availability of Mr. Subers is, and quite frankly, that on the things that all 9 board members need to be in the loop on, all 9 board members are in the loop on. Things that Dr. Otto needs to be in the loop on, he's in the loop on it. So that's what I'm trying to go with it. That's all.
But I do agree that Dr. Otto needs to be kept in the continual loop. I mean, I kept him in the loop with what I had with him negotiate. I think we need to be made aware of what is going on. As soon as we got done, I called him the next day, and then Mr. Supers let him know.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that. That's to me, that's in this whole conversation. I mean, we're talking retainer and this and that, but the communication is crucial to me. So whatever we can do to make sure that.
Last year we decided to channel everything through.
I think everything, anybody who has a question needs to feel, if they need to contact Mr. Zubers, contact Dr. Otto first. Let him be the gatekeeper.
Because for the
And not that you can't
they
call.
already have the answer.
Correct. And not that he might say, go ahead, call him up and let me know what he says. But then let Dr. Otto do, that's his gatekeeper's job.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
And individually, Mr. Subers may get 9 phone calls with the same
Correct.
question.
Correct.
And like that, if
So
Dr.
it's gotta be
Otto,
something that-
if it's a committee and Dr. Otto knows the answer, he only has to call one. I mean, if Mr. Sheen calls and you're in the same committee, Mr. Seminary, you both call Brian, and it's a waste of Brian's time when Dr. Otto knows the answer, so why don't you just contact Dr. Otto?
And quite frankly, if
I mean,
it's
if
a
it goes
committee
on-
meeting, it should be his action item.
Correct.
To contact Mr.
Correct.
Supers, not the committee.
I think it funnels through you.
Yeah, it always has been.
How do you
Yep.
typically do this with other school districts?
I would say the majority of the school boards will interface through the superintendent for
Correct. That's his job.
at least the majority.
He also knows if he has an answer.
And it's usually, and we're present.
And sometimes, I mean, again, I'm not an attorney, but I may have an answer for you without having to call Mr. Subers.
Or you have a letter of it.
Right.
You already have an opinion on it.
Right. Well, that was sort of the purpose of the legal
Well, that's
file
what I'm saying,
as
and I
well,
think-
is that there may be an opinion that was already rendered on something.
Run
So,
it through Dr. Otto.
okay, I just want to get that straight. Thank you, guys. I appreciate
Mr.
that.
Basil, I have one thing before we go on.
Yes.
Sorry. We got to go back to 14. We never officially voted to table 14.
Oh, you're right. You're absolutely right.
We have a motion from Mr. Sheen and a second from Mr. Potts. So,
Okay, well, let's get a roll call vote on that.
I guess
Repeat
we-
what it is.
I'm sorry.
Repeat what it is.
The motion is to table all of number 14 for now.
No, A
I'm
through
sorry,
N.
I'm sorry,
A through N.
Letter A through N. I'm sorry. The table it. We never did vote on it, so we're still out there with a motion.
Thank you for the reminder. Let's get a roll call vote on that then, please.
Mr. Sheen.
Yes.
Mr. Wolf.
Yes.
Mr. Seminaro.
Yes.
Mrs. Hamill.
Yes.
Mr. Kurtz. Yes. Mr. McCullough, yes. Mr. McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. Potts.
Yes.
Mr. Basil.
Yes.
Now we're tabled A through N.
Great. And was there something else under new business?
Yes. I'd like to make a general announcement to the community. As you know, for those of you that are on the Connect Ed system, you're invited to an open community forum this Wednesday evening at Daniel Boone High School to move forward and do some planning in the aftermath of the unfortunate incidents that took place at our high school back in February. We had an organizational meeting today. We will actually have a pretty nice panel of experts who will be here. We'll have 2 people from the United States Office of Civil Rights, an individual from the Pennsylvania Human Resources Commission, State Police will be present, the high school administration will be present. I will be present as well. We would like to see as many people who can spare some time with us on Wednesday night to move forward in a positive direction. We'll, use that time, approximately 2 hours on Wednesday night, to point the arrow in the right direction in looking at this whole issue. So I welcome all of you. The whole community is invited. I understand people are busy, but this is a school and community issue, and we certainly appreciate your support on Wednesday night and come out and listen to what we'd like to do to move forward. And I would say that both to parents and students alike. As you students, many of you sitting out here, you're affected by some of this. It would be great to see as much student representation in the audience as well. So it's on the website. It's been announced. For anyone from the press here, if you would give us some free advertisement. Wednesday night, 6:30 at the high school.
Okay, thank you. Any other new business?
I have a quick acknowledgement. I was recently, I had the privilege to attend an event put on by the Berks County Daughters of the American Revolution. And what happens, all the districts of Berks County have the opportunity to student is, and they wanted me to convey thank you to the high school administration for actually going through and doing this program, because a lot of districts don't. So on their behalf, and I'd like to thank them too. Thank you for doing, in the guidance department, for doing these programs that really benefit students that really aren't at a cost to the district at all. So I personally would like to thank the high school and guidance department for doing those programs.
Great, thank you. Any other new business? Okay, seeing none, presentations by the public on any issue.
Hi, I'm Tina Jolivet of Douglasville, 313 Woodbridge Lane. I was sitting at the back, and I wasn't sure if you all voted on the kindergarten with the kids starting the date September to November. But my concern is I have a son whose birthday is August 5th. And when he went in, he hit every benchmark. Now, he's in class with kids that are pretty much 11 months older than he is. And I know of one kid in his classroom who took the IQ test and did go into kindergarten early. His birthday is September 21st. And they're doing excellent. And he's in the high math class with my son. And I believe that the principals, they deliberately want to get rid of this because they have to deal with parents like me. Because my son went in and he hit every benchmark. He's testing 2 years ahead. If you hold them home for another year, they're still going to come in at the top of the class. And we expect you to up the standards when they come into the classroom. So I've had to deal with teachers from kindergarten, first, and second grade saying up this. And what they say is, we have to teach the second grade curriculum. So you might as well let them in. If they're 5, and if they can do the work, they can manage it, they work. They're the smartest and the brightest kids in the classroom. They typically don't cause a problem, and so I was getting a little upset to hear that they're trying to get rid of this. But even my son being in second grade, I had a meeting with the guidance counselor, the teacher, at least 4 or 5 people, even this school year, about upping my son's program. He is second grade, and he is in the gifted program. His birthday is August 5th. He just barely made it into kindergarten with the rest of his class. But is he more than capable? Yes. Does he make straight A's? Yes. And I can give you the name of a child who is doing as well as my son, and his birthday is September 21st. So you really need to think about it, because if he had stayed home another year, he's just going to come in even smarter. And you're going to have to change your program on how you're going to meet the needs of the child. My son has a GIEP, so does this kid. And, I have to constantly go to the teachers because we don't want them skipped ahead. I have to reassure the teacher, the principal, I'm not here for you to skip him. They're so afraid that you want to move your child ahead. I said, I'm not trying to, I believe that every child needs to go through step 1, step 2, step 3. Because there's a process, and he needs to learn the curriculum. But can you up it? And they did. They gave him harder spelling words, and They're doing other things. But should you deny them access to the school? No.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the public?
I'm John Okuneski. I'm from 511 Harding Street in Birdsboro. And I represent a group of concerned parents, and I'd like to applaud the administration and the athletic facilitator for their efforts in trying to find a new football coach and what they're looking for. To be transparent with Dr. Otto, I had contacted him this morning, and he got back to me right away. We wanted to make our concerns known because there's been a delay in the hiring of that football coach and what emphasis has been put on that. And what we understand is that some qualified individuals have applied for the position and have turned the position down, and it seems to be because there is no teaching positions available to go with the head football coaching position. We realize that these two positions would be separate, but it seems it to be competitive, and the qualities that football is so important to our group and to the community in general, that there seems to be some lack of, for better words, competitiveness in being able to attract a qualified candidate that would be excellent for the job. And it seems like we're able to, other school districts in the area from a competitive standpoint are able to hire in coaches that have teaching positions in their high schools. And this includes Wilson, Wyomissing, Exeter, Muhlenberg, Reading, Pottsgrove, Owen J. Roberts, Pottstown, Springford, and others that have had recent coaching changes. We want to reinforce our support for the football program and for the student athletes into the community. And I also want to address the fact that we built a beautiful new stadium that shows the support from the board and from the community and the attendance at those games. And I want to remind that as a good football program goes, it's not all about winning. There's an educational quality and competitiveness that goes with that. But people attend. They attend in droves. And when they attend, they pay admission. And there's, I saw the reports in the newspaper that I think there's been at least over $100,000 generated in sports revenue from pay to participate and admissions. And to look at that there could be a possibility of decline if we don't address this problem. The one thing I would like, if I could get an answer to or an explanation is to gain a better understanding of the school district's position or policy on hiring experienced teachers into the district and what the school district can offer when a teaching position is available, whether that's a contractual in the contract or whether that's, and I think that would be well explained to the folks that are here in a very positive manner to try to state our, support for resources being used in this capacity, whether that's a contractual thing or a board policy. Can that be addressed at this time?
Sure, I think we can address that. Mr. Subers, did you want to address the contractual issue with the collective bargaining agreement and the way
as far as hiring teachers, it's within the discretion of the administration who they recommend, and typically they're looking for the best qualified persons for the opening, if there is an opening, for that opening.
That's correct. And as I explained when we talked this morning, the hiring of a football coach is an extracurricular position. It is separate from the teaching portion of the position. So I don't, in all of those districts that you named, I'm sure if we went back and did research, they must have had some kind of teaching opening. But I do not know of any public school that will just create a new teaching job because someone has football credentials as well. And I can speak for the board, I don't think we're in that position from a budgetary standpoint to free up that kind of funding to be able to designate someone to be a football coach and then try to find them a teaching job. So, as I said to you this morning, I just need to be clear about that. And it's not that we share your passion as well. I mean, I don't think anybody wants to see the program suffer, but there are contractual issues that come into play here that we really just, our hands are tied a little bit. And anybody can weigh in on that.
We haven't filled any positions since our football coach resigned at the high school that a qualified applicant came that would have been able to fill to begin with.
We were close with a candidate, and if Mr. McElmore were here, he'd say it. The one thing, in all his years' experience as high school principal, and I've been a high school principal as well, people are not going to jump districts to come here if there's not a teaching position waiting for them. They're not going to give up the security of a job where they're making $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, whatever they're making, to take I think our coaching job is approximately $3,000. They're just not going to make that sacrifice. So that's a personal issue We have constraints. We're not like a college program where we can just pay someone, or like the National Football League where we can just pay someone a coaching salary. We're not in that position.
Yeah, I guess the actual stipend paid to the coaches is designated by...
That's contractual. That's contractual as a head football coach.
One other constraint is if we had furloughed professional employees, they would be subject to recall if they were certified for the position and there was an opening for which they were certified.
Well, I guess is my question is when it comes to the teaching position, that when a position would open up, if that was a priority of the board, or that was the best candidate that was available, and I'm just going to give an example, that if someone had 20 years experience and was on a certain step, because every step I believe is different from school district to school district, on matching or coming closer, is there a negotiation stance that can occur with that teacher who might now or be the football coach at Daniel Boone High School? Are they able to negotiate, or is that a set policy in the contract that negates that they can only offer so much to be able to match that up? And I'm sure security or the seniority doesn't come into it, but
it's in the contract. Teacher more. If he's coming in, just to use an example, if he's coming in from his current school and he wants $10,000 more than a matching position in this district is paying, we can't pay him more money.
I wouldn't expect that. But if they matched up the same on step, there's not any contractual obligation to say that it can only be half the step or half the amount or anything like that.
At the same time, if we already have a teacher that we furloughed and he comes in and he's got this, and he's to be a head coach, we got to bring the furloughed employee back.
Okay, that's good to know.
Based upon the bargaining agreement.
I would tell you that when we interview candidates, we look for a wide range of skills. Coaching obviously makes some candidates more attractive than others, but if we're looking for a math teacher or a social studies teacher, I have to be honest with you, we're looking for the math skill and the social studies skill first.
Absolutely, and I agree with that from a community perspective, and I think that the parents of the kids that play feel the same way, and others may speak as well on their own behalf, but I just think that it's important when we support the resources to match, to be able to negotiate so that we don't lose quality. And not to say that you can promise anything in the future, but that there would be at least a negotiation process, because I was under the assumption from my discussions that it was a contractual thing that said no, there's only a certain step that you would come in on.
I don't think negotiate is a good word here. I think there has to be a fit. Fit would be the word I would use rather than negotiate.
And I think the other thing to point out is that somebody who's working in a different school district as a math teacher or whatever, there's nothing preventing them from coming here and being our football coach. They just come here and they get the stipend as a football coach.
Right.
Okay? But they don't have to give up their job somewhere else to coach here at Daniel Boone.
And we've tried that, and I think that we've not had success in the past in that way. And that's why I think that it's so important.
Yeah.
Because when you look at the school districts and how that matches up, I think that it's an important step. And
I would agree with you. That's not ideal to do that, but we'll continue to try to find good candidates, and if you can help us, you have a network. If you can get us names and see if they're interested in Daniel Boone. Like you said, we have a good tradition. We'd like to keep it going, but obviously, like I said, from a financial standpoint, there are certain fits and obligations that we have to meet as well.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Kristen Fiorani. I am from Amity Township, 307 Kingston Drive. I'm here just to show my support for Mrs. Kelly Held, who is a fifth grade.
Ms. Fiorani, I'm going to have to interrupt you here because that's going to be an issue of executive discussion. Okay. And so I'm not sure this is the appropriate forum for this conversation.
Okay. Would there be any time or place to be able to
Okay,
share?
hold on a second. 1 second.
We can accept her comment without any response because she
Okay. Okay. I'm not sure if you heard that. So I was just getting some legal advice here. So you're absolutely entitled to your 3 minutes. Say whatever you like. We're going to take that in, but we don't expect a response from the board. Okay.
The only thing I would request is that you not disclose any student names other, of course, your son or daughter, you have that privilege, but not to disclose the names or identities of other students.
Absolutely, I understand.
Okay.
I'm really just here to share my support for Mrs. Held. She has been an amazing teacher this year for my child, and she has gone above and beyond and then some for our daughter. And I just hope that as you take things in personnel consideration, that you look into what she has done for our daughter. She has taken her own personal time, many, many days during her prep and planning period. She has made a personal visitation to our home on her way home to drop off homework for our daughter, just to let her know how much the class was missing her while she was out. She really just exemplifies the kind of teacher that I would hope all of our teachers here in the district are. I'm an educator myself, and I would be thrilled to work with people of her caliber and capacity, and just hope that that's something that you can take into consideration when you have your meeting later tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate them.
I'm Chat, 729 each second. I want to thank all 9 board members for your vote on 11D tonight. Thank you. It may be my hearing, but some of you up there do speak into the mic, and some of you are very far away from the mic. I just suggest if you're going to speak, to have a mic there. I know you probably can't have 11 mics, but it's difficult to hear at times. The April 4th finance meeting and the April 11th finance meeting.
Those are budget workshops.
I'm sorry, budget workshops.
Yep.
Okay, now your 2 meetings that you normally have scheduled, the workshop session and the voting session, you can vote at both of those meetings, correct?
All meetings
committee, the whole meeting,
yes,
and the voting meeting, that's correct.
Now, last year, if I remember correctly, the only time that you actually voted on something with the budget before you put it out in May was to discontinue full-day kindergarten. You had a separate vote on that. Okay. My question is, when you have this budget on the 4th and the 11th, are you going to be taking any formal votes or just getting a consensus?
To my knowledge, we're just going to be discussing items of the budget to get familiar with the different options that are available to us. The only reason why we had to move quickly last year was from an enrollment standpoint. We had deadlines that we had to make, so we had to give the administration a commitment from this board ahead of time.
Thank you. And it's just more or less a procedural question on 14. When you did the policy, I thought your 20-minute discussion was interesting and needed, particularly on 201. However, I think, Mr. Basil, you asked first, could we discuss this? And then somebody made a motion to table, and there was a second. Mr. Suber, correct me if I'm wrong. There should have been an immediate vote on the tabling, and if you had discussion, that should have been labeled under Robert's rules. Am I right?
No, because
typically under Robert's rules there is, but now since after the discussion, I'd have to check the board's policy based on some of Mr. Kurtz's comments.
Under small group discussions, there's a different set of parameters. Our small group rules is a different set of parameters under Robert's Rules of Order.
Okay, I thought I thought you were voting. Somebody moved to table it, and this is a voting meeting. Once you move to table it, and it's seconded, there's no discussion about anything, and you vote on it. Am I wrong?
No, you are correct.
I would have to actually take a look at the small group rules on that issue, because I know they're different.
Why is it small group when this is a committee of the board?
Because we're governed by Robert's Rules of Orders for small groups. That's what our policy says.
So, am I wrong in my assumption? I mean, I thought your discussion was needed, but I think there should have been, my opinion is there should have been a vote, and then...
In the past, we would have voted immediately upon the tabling vote.
Right. Okay.
Past practices are we would have probably tabled it.
But I thought your discussion was needed.
I think we clearly did go out of order there because we wrote 17, we had to go back to 15.
Okay, no problem. Again, thanks for your...
did get mixed up.
Mr. Shat, that's why Mr. Kurtz is trying to clean that up so we don't do that. Because we are tending to have more of a discussion among the board maybe in the past, and we seem to be jostling around, and actually maybe Mr. Kurtz will, in his policy, will clean that up so we don't do that.
Okay, and thanks again for your vote on 11D.
I would like to request maybe, Mr. Subers, you can come back at our next meeting and give us a rundown of our current policy and then the new group rules, the small group rules, and if you could maybe give the board an idea of how that will change or how he hasn't followed the policy, what we can do to follow the policy, and maybe give us tips to change the policy if it's not acceptable.
Sure.
Thank you.
I know the rule he's referring to is General Roberts rules. I'm not as familiar with small group rules.
There's a lot more flexibility on the small
You may
group
also
rules.
find that the small groups will refer back to the general rules on certain things instead of rewriting them.
It's policy number 6.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Tony Kamak. I live at Cuesta Drive in Elverson. And I've lived in the Daniel Boone District for 14 years. I've homeschooled my 3 sons for 11 years. I brought with me tonight a copy of my tax bill from last year, $4,488 that we've paid for the past 14 years, which I expect to go up again this year. The reason I point that out is one of my sons needs to take chemistry and algebra 2 in the fall. I called the school district. They told me he's not allowed to take these classes at Daniel Boone because he's a homeschooler. I have friends who also homeschool in the Twin Valley, Garden Spot, and other school districts. Their kids pick up Spanish, algebra, chemistry, all kinds of classes at their local public school. And I'd like to understand why my sons are not allowed to take a class that we have a hardship in providing. I can't do a lab at home to provide accurate chemistry for him that he needs. I can't do algebra 2 with him. I did go to our local Christian school, $1,200 per class for him to go. So on top of my tax bill, I would have to pay $2,400 for him to go to our local Christian school. So my question is, why are my sons not allowed to take the class at Daniel Boone when we are taxpayers in the community?
I'll have to check into that to you. Our policy generally looks at the availability of seats for the students that are here, and we have had some cases where homeschooling students have been allowed to sit in on classes. So if you wouldn't mind giving me a call tomorrow, I can do some further investigation for you and check out. Okay?
Because, I mean, if we enroll him in the school, you're going to have a seat for him anyway.
Right. So if you would just give me a call tomorrow, and we can have a conversation, and I'll check into the details for you.
I appreciate that. Your name?
I'm Dr. Otto, superintendent.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, I'm Xavier Smith, I live in 105 Kettle Lane. I speak with the football team. Everybody's goal in life is to get better at something that they do. And when we had a coach, we got better each and every day. But now, since we don't have a coach, we're not getting better. Our ability is just staying the same. And I feel that everybody in the county, every other team in the county is getting better except for us. So if we have structure and we have a coach, we'll get better each and every day if we have a coach. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
My name is Ethan Myers, 646 West 6th Street, Birdsboro. I would also like to stress the importance on hiring a high school football coach in the near future. Not only would this be a benefit to the high school, but it is also a community thing. We think that the position we are in right now as players has become untenable. We are going every day, putting hours in, but it is a discouraged and disheartened environment. We feel that our efforts that we're giving each and every day should be reciprocated with the success that the hiring of a new coach would bring. And we'd also like to thank you for your support of the football team in the past, and that it is a difficult job to hire someone in this economy and still maintain fiscal responsibility. But we would just like to have them as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Hi, Bob Smith, Kettle Lane, Douglasville. Just a couple of things. One was a question. Can you just kind of explain what the financial impact or revenue is from a Friday night home football game?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what the financial impact is of a Friday night football game.
We can get you the information. We just don't have it, here right now.
Okay. Are those amounts typically factored into the budget?
Yes.
So that's something that should be available, right?
Game receipts.
Budget items coming up here.
Yep, game receipts are factored into the budget.
Okay.
To a degree. we sit there and we've looked at game receipts as part of the collective whole when we were looking at activity fees and everything else. And last year we raised ticket prices to generate more revenue for the school district to cover our activities.
Right. So would it be a fair statement to say that if a program that declines would tend to have less revenue based upon, interest, lack of interest, could be a negative factor?
It's a hypothetical. I mean, I see where you're going with this, Mr. Smith. I think at the end of the day, obviously attendance at games, any game, for any program where there's ticket sales helps support the overall school district and the athletic or extracurricular activities that those events generate.
I think we would agree that football more so than any other sport, from a revenue standpoint.
I don't have those numbers in front of me. I'd be happy to answer your question if I had those numbers in front of me.
I think the bottom line is I don't think anybody's disagreeing with Mr. Smith that we need a football coach. Okay. The bottom line is we don't have every football coach that's been coming in is saying he also wants a teaching position to teach, and there's no teaching position.
I understand that. I want to make sure we're aware of the entire picture. Trust me, I understand. I don't want a teacher lose a job for a teacher coming in. I just want to make sure we understand the total impact.
The athletic director gave us, the football revenue because we put all those numbers in our budget. So, it was a significant number. There's no doubt about that.
Here's the thing is, no candidate has been presented to the board. If a candidate's presented to the board, then we'll vote on it. There is none out there yet, so there's no delay from anybody. There's just not a match between a coach and the district. None of them were presented. There's never been no one on the agenda. So,
right. I think we're all here to get a better understanding of that process.
I'm sure the administration is working diligently to find one. I know it's a priority. So once they present one, we'll bring it up for vote.
Okay. Along those lines, can we just talk about the practice of hiring a coach once that person is identified? I'm assuming there's an interview process, 1, 2, 3, some number of interviews. Once that person has passed that, we'll call it first level. Is that when they then presented to the board? Or is it only one candidate that gets presented to the board? Or
generally, the process that we follow is the building that's responsible, the principals. I think a lot of people misunderstand, but under PIAA rules, the principal really runs the athletic program at both the middle school and the high school. So the high school administration, the minute Mr. Bedolis made us aware that he was no longer going to be coaching, we began to advertise and started that process. Within a month of him resigning, we started that process. So I know they've been actively looking at people. We just, to be quite honest with you, we didn't get many applications. We just didn't get them. So they haven't, I have asked them, obviously based on this position, given that football tends to be, as you're pointing out, a little bit more high profile than maybe some other programs, not any more important, but a little more high profile in terms of the revenue it brings in. So I have asked them that when they get to somebody that they believe is going to be their recommendation, I would like to have a sit down with them as well so that I can at least represent to the board that this is somebody that we want. But that hasn't happened yet.
You're not at that point just yet.
No one's come to me yet. And I ask weekly, where are we with this process? I just want to make sure that everybody's clear that we're not sitting on our hands here. We're stuck between a rock and a hard place.
And I think that's what Dr. Oz' comment was earlier. You have a network, help them out. Make a recommendation to a candidate and have call the principal and the athletic facilitator and move the process along.
Right, yeah. I would just urge that the board does all they can to support this process. There's a number of kids here that sacrificed some time coming out tonight. Some are juniors and seniors. Some are hoping to go to the next level. As one of the students pointed out every day, that we don't move forward is almost a step backwards because every other program is moving in that positive direction. So I just urge that we do all that we can. And just one more statement. Friday, August 31st, our season will begin at Cocalico. That's only 157 days left, so there is somewhat of a sense of urgency here. So I appreciate your time.
Here's the thing is, after so many years on the board, Mr. Sheen, get back to us. I don't think there's any very few candidates, teachers, coaches, volunteers that ever come before the board, and we voted them down. I can only think of a handful. So again, the board's not delaying any aspect of this, and nor I don't think we would if they present a viable candidate to fit our needs. It will probably go through. Again, it's never. It's not usually an issue.
Perhaps it's just a lack of there's a lack of communication here, but the bottleneck isn't the board, and the bottleneck isn't the administration. It's just there haven't been a lot of candidates that have stepped forward to interview for the position. And quite frankly, I've received a call from a coach who was interested in the position, and I referred him to submit his resume to our athletic facilitator and interview for the position. That's the best I can do. And I think, as Mr. McCullough said, if you guys know people out there who would make excellent coaches, then they should submit a resume as quickly as possible, because we want to get the candidate placed as quickly as possible as well. So to the degree that you know people have experience in coaching football, bring them to the table. We're not denying anybody the opportunity to interview for the job. Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Frank Cole, 775 Old Airport Road, Douglasville.
Mm-hmm.
I am a coach in the district, and I'll preface this by saying this is not a job interview, or I'm not up here for that aspect. With so few candidates at the first time the coaching position was offered, I was one of them who did not even receive a call for an interview. Okay. I'm a coach here at the middle school, and along with that, I'm a coach at the high school with Dave's past staff. That's not why I'm here either to say that, but I question the athletic committee or who's choosing the coaches. If we had so few candidates, and to my knowledge there was 3, and whether that's true or false, I don't know. But why weren't all 3 people interviewed is what I would have to ask. And I'm not asking you because I understand the process.
I don't know the answers to your questions, but we can certainly find out. What happened to the people that interviewed?
There was somebody dropped. I don't know. I'm not going to point fingers, but somebody must have dropped the ball along the way somewhere. And if I'm deemed not qualified as a position, that's fine with me. If another person wasn't deemed qualified, that's fine. But with so few applicants, I just don't understand why there wasn't more interview. There was more of an interview process. And I'd just like to say too, and I'm going to sit down, but I think what we really, the whole thing that gets missed here, and I think that's what everyone's here about, the students, the football players, and I'll say just not the football players, it's any person that's involved in athletics at the school. Whether, and you can even take that to be a band member, if a band teacher, band leader resign. I mean, it's an important aspect of school. I played football since I was 7 years old, but it was a part of growing up and a part of my school years. And I just don't want the kids and the players to get lost in this whole mix. And to an extent, I believe that they are, but to another extent, I understand the process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. That was a long walk. I came this evening not to...
Sir, are you a resident of this district?
Yes, I am.
Could you have to
state your...
evening
to support the
I need your name and I need your
New Stelmar,
address. Can you give us your address, please?
New Stelmar, Douglasville.
Give a street address, sir.
Give
a street address.
I want to know why you want to ask me that. You didn't ask others that.
Because we have a policy that says you have to be a resident of this township or this district in order to address the board.
You have a committee. You have a committee. You know what?
Sir, please respect the policies of the district.
Take my bag and my billboard, and I want to go to jail. Now, I want you to do one thing for me. I came tonight to support you.
Great.
All right, but don't try to cut me up. You said you're bringing people in from Harrisburg, didn't you? You're bringing people from other place.
They're invited
And let me
speakers
tell you,
by the board, sir.
I work for the Pennsylvania People Relations Commission.
Sir, were you invited by the board to speak to address the board?
Yeah, I want to speak to this.
Okay.
And what I want to speak to, number one, was committed.
Sir, you're not a resident of this district.
You have a committee,
sir,
which is good. And I'd like to know, have you heard of no place left, no child left behind? No child left behind.
There's no further public comment, and we can adjourn the meeting.
Okay. Is there any further public comment?
Are you
There's no child.
Are you a resident of the district, ma'am? Okay, please address the board.
What I want you to do, take my bill for it. I want to sing.
Sir, you don't have standing. Sir, you do not have standing here.
Did you notice about a year ago, I stood at the mic for 2 hours and 15 minutes. I want you to bring the cops and arrest me.
Sir.
Because of the fact that I have the right to come here. I'm a taxpayer in this country.
Motion adjourned.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
I'm a taxpayer in this country.
You still have to stay here as a taxpayer here that wants to make comment. You're not going to adjourn this meeting like that.
It's adjourned.
It's adjourned.
No, you're not.
I'm leaving. And you're not going to stop me from
I'm
going.
leaving. It's adjourned. I have a first and a second. It's adjourned.
You guys, you have to follow the rules.
35 years now. How do you adjourn somebody, a taxpayer here, that wants to